There's a story we keep telling ourselves about the great crypto exchange collapse. It goes like this: a few bad actors, a genius villain, a sudden betrayal, innocent users blindsided overnight, billions stolen while nobody noticed. It's a comforting story. It has a clear villain, and most importantly, it removes responsibility from everyone else. But here's the uncomfortable truth that 90% of people secretly agree with, yet almost nobody says out loud. The exchange didn't steal billions in silence. Millions of people watched the red flags wave and chose to look away. This isn't victim blaming. This is pattern recognition. And if we don't admit this part, the same scandal will repeat again, just with a different logo, a different founder, and a slightly better PR team. The lie we tell after every financial disaster. Every major financial scandal in history follows the same emotional arc. At first, there's excitement, then disbelief, then denial, then anger, then a hunt for a single villain. We saw it with Enron, we saw it with Madoff, we saw it in 2008, we saw it with Theranos, and now we've seen it with crypto exchanges that collapsed under their own weight. After the dust settles, the narrative always simplifies itself into something like this: nobody could have known. But that statement is almost never true. What people really mean is we didn't want to know. The returns were the first confession. Let's start with the most obvious thing, because it matters more than any leaked document or courtroom testimony: the returns. They weren't just high. They weren't just aggressive. They were economically impossible. Guaranteed yields, risk-free staking, consistent profits in volatile markets, promises that traditional finance, math, and history had already proven false, over and over again. And yet, millions of users accepted them without asking the most basic question in finance: where is this money actually coming from? That question didn't require insider knowledge. It didn't require a finance degree. It required curiosity and honesty. Most people didn't ask it because they didn't want the answer. The cult of the founder. Every major financial collapse has a face: a charismatic leader, a visionary, someone young, confident, articulate, and fluent in optimism. Crypto elevated this dynamic to a new level. Founders weren't just CEOs, they were philosophers, saviors, and symbols of a new financial world. They wore casual clothes, spoke in memes, and positioned themselves as one of us. Questioning them wasn't just skepticism, it was treated as betrayal. If you asked about balance sheets, you were spreading FUD. If you raised concerns, you didn't get crypto. If you warned others, you were accused of jealousy or ignorance. This wasn't accidental, it was a defense mechanism. Because when belief replaces verification, scams don't need secrecy, they just need loyalty. Transparency theater, when open means nothing. One of the most repeated defenses after the collapse was this: but they were transparent. Were they? Or did they just perform transparency? Publishing selective metrics, releasing polished dashboards, sharing vague assurances instead of audited facts, using complex language to create the feeling of openness without the substance. True transparency is boring. It's slow. It's uncomfortable. What users were given instead was confidence theater, just enough information to reassure, not enough to verify. And again, most people accepted it, not because they were stupid, but because the alternative was emotionally inconvenient. Silence was the greatest asset. Here's something rarely discussed. The exchange's greatest asset wasn't technology, branding, or liquidity. It was silence. Silence from insiders who suspected something was wrong. Silence from influencers who didn't want to lose access. Silence from users who noticed inconsistencies but stayed quiet because withdrawals were still working. Silence from platforms that benefited from trading fees and hype. Everyone had an incentive not to ask questions until it was too late. This is how real financial bubbles work, not through ignorance, but through mutual avoidance. History was screaming, but nobody listened. What makes this scandal especially painful is that it wasn't new. We've seen this structure before. Centralized control marketed as decentralization, commingled funds justified as efficiency, lack of independent audits, over-reliance on trust, exponential growth without risk controls. These aren't crypto problems, they're human problems. Crypto didn't invent them, crypto just removed the guardrails faster. If you had studied even one major financial collapse from history, the pattern was visible. But history doesn't feel urgent when profits are rising. Victims and the responsibility nobody wants. Here's the sentence that makes people uncomfortable. Not everyone who lost money was powerless. Some were. Many weren't. Some users ignored obvious warning signs. Some concentrated their entire net worth in one platform. Some dismissed critics because being right would have meant selling early. Acknowledging this doesn't excuse fraud. It doesn't reduce legal guilt. But it does challenge the myth that responsibility only exists on one side. Financial systems collapse when trust replaces verification, and trust is a shared decision. Why this keeps happening? People like to say, this is why crypto failed. But crypto didn't fail. Human behavior stayed the same. Greed, fear of missing out, social pressure, authority bias, overconfidence during bull markets. Technology doesn't erase these traits, it amplifies them. Until people accept that, the cycle will repeat. New exchange, new narrative, new once-in-a-generation opportunity, new collapse, same excuses, different decade, same story. The hard lesson nobody teaches. Here's the lesson that never goes viral. If you don't understand how something generates returns, you are the product. If accountability is replaced with vibes, you are the liquidity. If questioning is discouraged, you are the exit liquidity. This applies to crypto. It applies to stocks. It applies to real estate. It applies to every speculative bubble in history. And if this sounds harsh, it's because history is harsh to people who refuse to learn from it. This is where real financial education starts. Real financial education doesn't start with charts or jargon. It starts with humility, with admitting, I might be wrong. This might be too good to be true. I should understand this before trusting it. Most people don't lose money because they're unlucky. They lose money because they outsource responsibility, and systems are very good at taking advantage of that. Subscribe me, and let's make your 2026 the year you stop losing money. The question everyone avoids. So here's the uncomfortable, polarizing question, one that actually matters. If the warning signs were visible, the returns made no sense, and skepticism was actively discouraged, who deserves more blame? The exchange that exploited trust, or the millions of users who chose comfort over questions? Say it out loud, and be honest.